This video is meant to be an introduction and tutorial with Excel and should be used in conjunction with the PDF file, the Excel tutorial. So I've gone ahead and I've taken a snapshot of the tutorial so I can have it in the same screen. I'm going to have it over on the right, but hopefully you're able to pull it up and follow along with me while we work over here on the left in Excel itself. So starting off in the beginning, we have the first thing. Let's talk about how we reference cells. And you'll notice that I have letters across the top and I have numbers down the side. Well, the letters reference the actual columns we have here. So this is column A, column B, column C, and so forth. And then going across are going to be our rows. So we have row 1, row 2, row 3. And if I click on a cell, say this one right here, this is going to be C3 because I am in column C, row 3. So the tutorial, this top block right here, this is cell A1. And I can do this for all of them. This would be C10. And if I click on it, you'll notice this highlights C, and it highlights 10 to help you reference that. So now we're going to go to number 2. We're going to talk about using formulas in a cell. So I'm going to go ahead and set it up the way it asks for. So I have A equals, and then I can go down here, and I have A equals. Now in B1, cell B1, I'm going to type it just like I see in the tutorial. So equals 1 plus 0.06 divided by 12. And if I hit enter, you'll see it changes to an actual number, right? 1.005, which is what the tutorial has in cell C1. However, if I don't do that equal sign, and I just say 1 plus 0.06 divided by 12, you see how it just keeps it as a text? Right? It's not a number. And this becomes a problem later on. Say I'm over here and I want to say equals B1, B1 plus 1. You'll see how Excel just added 1 to this value. So I now have 2.005. If I try to do the same thing, click on B2 and add 1, I'm going to get a hashtag value. And there's one thing in Excel we don't like. We don't like it to be trending, right? I don't want to see these hashtags. Something is then wrong. And it's wrong because this is not a value over here. This is text. So if you ever want to change a cell, I can just click on the cell. I can double click and you can see that my cursor is populated and I can move it over. And I can go over here and type in the equal sign that I want. And I'll go ahead and backspace out of that. Show you a different way. I can also click on the cell, and up top you'll see what we call the formula bar. And I can click anywhere in here and adjust it. So I'm going to go in front of the 1, and I'm going to type the equal sign that is necessary to make this a formula. And I hit enter, and you'll see my hashtag value goes away because this is now an actual formula, a value. It's no longer just text. So let's go ahead and do Excel number 3. We're going to reference other cells in our formula. So the first thing it says to do is it says let B2 equal 3. So here I am in B2. I'm going to type a 3 in, hit enter to get outside of that cell, and then it wants D4, and I can just click on the cell. I want it to be 5, and I hit 5, enter. Now it wants me to go to C6. So here I'm in C6, and I'm going to do a formula. I'm going to type equals, and I can either click on the cell that I want, B2, or I can type it out, right? So say plus, say I want to type it, D4. And it automatically, just typing in the letter D in the column 4, the row 4, it highlights it, right? You can see that it's highlighting B2 and it's highlighting D4, and I can hit enter, and Excel did the math. 3 plus 5, sure enough, is 8. Now, a common mistake that many cadets have is not getting out of a cell before wanting to do something else, right? So we said that this one equaled B2 plus D4. So say I go down here and I want to do equals 3 plus 8, and then I forget to hit enter and I just go over here. Well, you see how now that has changed to A10? And I get over here and I start to get nervous and I don't know what's happened, but now it's clicking cells I don't want, right? And I can't get it back to where I want it to be. So I can always hit enter and get out of that, and then go back and adjust it to what I really wanted this to be, backspace, backspace, and click on the cell, right? So just hit enter, get out of it, and go back to what you were doing. but you have to remember to hit enter to get out of a cell so that you don't keep chasing your cursor around to other cells. So now I've cleared my Excel and I've updated it so that we can talk about steps 4 and 5. So we're going to use a formula to create a list of numbers instead of going 0, 1, 2, 3, right? That can be kind of slow, especially if I've got to go out to like 500. So here we're going to do just like Excel 4 says. I'm going to type in 0 in A1, and you'll see that the result matches what's given in column C on the tutorial. So in A2, I'm going to say equals, and I can click on A1, or you can type A1 plus 1, and I want you to hit enter. And you see how I now get a 1. And I can do it again, equals A2 plus 1. And I can keep going if that's what I want to do. But now I want you to be more sophisticated and look at number 5. And I can keep doing equals, 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 but that takes so much time. So instead, I want you to highlight this last box, right? And it's green, and we see this guy right here. You see this green box? This is going to become our favorite friend. And I can click on it, and I can pull it down, right? The tutorial shows you if you move it over, but I want you to pull it down. And look at that, it automatically populates. And if I click on this cell, it's actually telling me it's taking the previous one and adding 1. I didn't have to type anything. And I can do this as long as I want to. I can just keep dragging it down. Now, say I already had this column built, right? I had my ends. Later on, we'll get to it. And I want to put a value here. I'm going to say 1200. And then maybe this equals this number times 5. Now, I could go ahead and drag down like we did before, and it populates, right? Or the second bullet is telling me that I can actually go ahead, and now that I have a column of a length that I want, I can find this green box and double click, right? And Excel will automatically make it the same length as the column next to it. Now that we're comfortable with the basics, let's go ahead and start using Excel like we will in MA 103 for block 1. So right now I'm on Excel number 6. And you can follow along here in the tutorial, but we're also doing example 1.3.1 on page 29 in MRCW, or Modeling in a Real Complex World. All right, so we're going to see how we can use Excel to actually compute these DDS models, right, instead of actually doing it by hand or on our calculator. Let's use the power of a computer. So I'm going to set it up like it shows. So I have A equals, and I'm going to tab over, and I'm going to go D equals, and let's go ahead and set it up. So in B1, we're going to have equals 1 plus 0.06 divided by 12. That was our A value for this problem. And in B2, we're going to do negative 235. So now that I have A and D set up, let's go ahead and go down to A4. We're going to type in N and tab over, and we have our P sub N. Now we're ready to start modeling this DDS. So in A5, let's go ahead and put our initial condition, right? So N is 0 for P naught, so our value was $10,000 for this car purchase. And if you notice, I'm not going to put in any commas, right? Excel doesn't want to know about the commas, just the numbers. And I hit enter. So now, this cell, using the previous steps we have, we can just say equals the previous plus 1, right? And have Excel do the math for us so that later on we can actually use the drag option, right? So now I have 0 and 1, and what does it equal at P sub 1? Well, I'm going to have Excel do the math for me, right? I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to say equals, well, we're using the same formula, A times P sub N minus 1 plus D. So I have A, and then here's where I'm talking about locking in a cell. I don't want this A value to really change when I drag down this cell. So I want to lock it in. And on your computer, you're going to hit F4, or some of you might have to hit function F4 at the same time. So if I hit function F4, you notice how I get these dollar signs around the B. I want both dollar signs, okay? So I have now locked in this cell. When I drag it down, it won't drag down this value as well. It'll stay there. So I have B1 locked in times my previous step. Well, that's this right here. So B5 plus, and I want B5, I want my P sub n minus 1 to change, so I'm not going to lock him in, plus my D, right? And D is not going to change throughout this problem, so let's go ahead and lock him in. Function F4, my dollar signs appear. And now I hit enter, and Excel does the math for me. You should get $9,815. And to finish out step 6, we're going to use what we learned in step 5, right? So I could drag down each individually, oops, and it'll auto-populate, or step 6 instead says go ahead and highlight this whole selection, right? I highlighted A6 through B6, and then I can come over here and pull it down all together, right? And I need to go one more to get to my 12th iteration, and you should see these values, right? And this matches what MRCW has as far as the answer. At the 12th month, the balance is $7,717.92. Now, some of you might be worried because you're off over here as far as your decimals, right? We're talking pennies. And that's just, it depends on how many significant figures that your Excel wants to go out to. Mine has decided to round everything to 2, and so it differs slightly from what you see in the Excel tutorial, right? And you can always change how many decimal places you want to see. If I were to highlight all of this, I can go up here and say, hey, I want to see 3, 4, 5, or I know that I'm dealing with money, so I'm going to back it up and say I only want to see 2, right? I'm not going to get more than into penny level. And that's how I can make sure that it has exactly what maybe your neighbor has. So our final step, step 7, is to learn how to graph things, right? So in order to graph, we first need to highlight the data that we want to plot. So I'm going to go ahead and I need to highlight all of this data, right? And that might have been too fast. I'll show you again. I can click on the first cell and still clicking down, go ahead and highlight both columns of data, right? Then I'm going to go up top. This is called the ribbon up here. And I want you to go ahead and click on Insert. And you'll see how now new options have populated. So within Insert, I'm now going to look over here. This is the Charts tab, right? And within the Charts tab, you'll see right here an icon that looks like a scatter plot. And I have a right down arrow right here. I want you to go ahead and click on that right down arrow. And now go ahead and select that first one, right? Because we're dealing with discrete functions. I just want to see the dots or the scatter plot. And now I have a chart. Now that I have my chart or graph, it's helpful to actually label it properly. So the first thing we're going to do is actually change the chart title to something that's more applicable. So you can highlight, just click up here into the text box, and then I double click, it highlights all of it. And I'm going to change this to Robert's car loan balance, right? And then I click out of it and I'm done editing that. But if you notice, now that I've clicked on the chart, I get this green plus mark, right? And that's how we're going to actually add in the axis labels. So if I click on it, I then select the axis labels and you'll see that they've populated down here, right? I can take them away and say you want to actually use the ribbon instead. If I click anywhere on the chart, I can go up here to add chart element, axes titles, primary, and I have to actually do them separately, and add the vertical. So lastly, let's go ahead and change it from axes title to some words that actually are applicable to this problem. So first of all, what do we want our y-axis to be, right? Our vertical one. Well, this is our P sub n value, but in words, that's the loan, I'll say car loan balance. And really, it's the car loan balance in dollars. So go ahead and throw your units in there, right? And now my horizontal axis, well, this is what? Well, this is my n value, right? So I'm going to go ahead and say n months. And it's that easy. I now have a chart showing my DDS that's properly labeled for my visual learners out there. I hope this tutorial was helpful. If you have questions, don't be afraid to reach out to your instructor or schedule AI.